Welcome everyone to another episode of Bizarre Ones Podcast. I'm your host, Kai.
And I'm your other co-host, Dr. Anarchy.
And in this episode, everybody, we're going to explore some strange news stories. So let's just jump right into the episode. So this first news story, if you will, takes place in Colombia, where police caught a man smuggling packets of cocaine under his toupee.
Are they sure, Kai, that it wasn't Donald Trump smuggling, cocaine under that toupee?
No, Doc, it wasn't Donald Trump smuggling packets of cocaine under his toupee. So anyways, the Colombian police apprehended a 40-year-old man.
Okay, so the fact that they apprehended a 40-year-old man, Kai, proves that it's not Donald Trump, because, Donald Trump's, 500 years old?
I think he's actually, 70-something, or 80, something like that, Dr. Anarchy. So I don't think he's, But anyways, so he attempted to smuggle several bags of cocaine concealed beneath a meticulously attached toupee. Police said the suspect was detained at the airport on Monday as he prepared to board a flight to Amsterdam.
That makes sense that he decided to try to go to Amsterdam and all that, Kai, because, that is, druggy capital of the world, if you will. Well, it's mainly marijuana capital of the world, but, there you have a lot more loose, relaxed laws, from what I understand, when it comes to, drug usage.
Yeah, that's true that they do. So anyways, the scanner revealed the hidden cargo, which was 220 grams of cocaine packaged in small bags, strategically placed under what authorities described as a narco wig. The police estimate that the street value of the drugs at approximately 10,000 euros in European markets. A police video released on Monday captured the moment an officer wearing blue gloves carefully removed his wig with scissors, revealing approximately a dozen packets of cocaine. Further police statement confirmed that the suspect's prior criminal record, which included 2 previous drug trafficking convictions. Organized crime groups are exploiting young people, falsely suggesting they can easily bypass our security measures. However, this case just demonstrates that is not true. Cocaine production in Colombia has been rising since 2013, according to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime.
The thing is, though, I wouldn't consider 40 young. The police officer said young, right, Kai? And the thing is that's not young. That's around, our age.
Yeah, that is true. It is around our age. I wouldn't consider him young either, especially for the fact that he had a toupee and whatnot. But, the thing that he did hide it under his toupee and was like, you know what, I'm going to hide the drugs underneath my toupee, and this will bypass security measure. I'm surprised that it didn't bypass the security measures, to be honest. I mean, it was under a toupee. Who would ever bother to look under the toupee, But that was the first news story, if you will, that we have in this episode of this podcast. So this next story takes place in Connecticut. There was a Scottish Highland bull that was on the loose.
Kai, I call bullshit on that story.
It's true. No bull. Well, there was a bull, obviously. But anyways, the Scottish Highland bull was the talk of the town, actually, in the rural hills of the western Connecticut city that had been roaming for over a month in the frigid winter weather after it escaped from its confines. Local residents had reported sporadic sightings, including a few of the past weeks, said Lee Soule, the animal control officer in Kent. It was recently seen just over the town line in New Milford. He said, people keep spotting it, and they don't know that people are looking for it, Soule said in a phone interview Thursday. If somebody calls me about a sighting, then I tell the owner, and they've been doing their best. They run right out and try to get it, but it's hard. It's hard in the sweater, and it's very scared. The owner, Joe and Joray, said there have been people out looking for the bull, but they haven't been able to catch it. Photos posted on social media by people who have spotted the bull have drawn a range of comments, from ones expressing sympathy for its plight to others saying the bull is adorable to one saying it would produce good steaks. Stray farm animals are nothing new in the area. Cows, horses, and goats get loose all the time.
Just imagine, though, Kai, if you will, you're just driving home and you just see this bull, and then you go to tell your friend about the story. The first thing they're going to say is, oh, bull. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm talking about the bull that's on the loose. And they're like, no, bull. And they're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a bull on the loose out in the country. And they're like, no, that story is bull. And it's like, yeah, it's a story about a bull.
Yeah. But the bull story evoked memory as a buddy of the beefalo, a bison hybrid who roamed the woods in central Connecticut for months in 2020 and 2021 after escaping on the way to the slaughterhouse. He was eventually caught and moved to a Florida animal sanctuary. Scottish Highland cattle are known as a hardy breed that can live outside all year, according to the Highland Cattle Society in Scotland. That's good for Connecticut bull because temperatures have been below freezing for several days. So that's probably why this particular person had that particular bull to begin with, because it can withstand the cold temperatures, if you will, of Connecticut. And Connecticut gets really cold because it's like not that far from where I used to grow up before I moved to Texas back in 1990. When I moved to Texas in 1999, I am from Ohio, and yeah, it can get cold. So I'm pretty sure Connecticut can even get colder. So this story is another story that is no bull. There's no bullshit to this story. So, Dr. Anarchy, you remember the story as a kid that we learned in Sunday school about Jonah and the whale, and Jonah was swallowed up by the whale, right?
Yeah, I remember that story, Kai, about the Jonah. Like, I think some people say it was a big fish and whatnot, but everybody knows, obviously, if it was actually possible, it would have been a big whale because there's no fish that big. Well, I guess there kind of is a fish that big, the prehistoric fish. But anyways, yes, I remember the story of Jonah and the whale.
Okay, so that's what this story kind of is similar to. So this humpback whale briefly swallowed a kayaker in Chilean Patagonia, and it was all captured on camera, believe it or not.
So you're telling me, Kai, that basically this person was literally swallowed by a whale, like Jonah?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that he was literally swallowed by a whale. Sorry about that noise in the background. If you heard it, I had a text message on my phone. But anyways, a humpback whale briefly swallowed a kayaker off the Chilean Patagonia before quickly releasing him unharmed. The incident was caught on camera and quickly went viral.
So, Kai, not only was this man swallowed by a whale, but he came out completely unharmed, was like no damage or anything like that, and went about his life, I guess, afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, Doc, is basically he was swallowed by a whale and then he came out unharmed, and they have it all on camera. Last Saturday, Adrian Simancas was kayaking with his father, Del, in Bahia El Aguaya, near the San Isidro Lighthouse in the Strait of Magellan. I may have pronounced all that wrong, I'm not sure. But anyways, when a humpback whale surfaced, engulfing Adrian in his yellow kayak for a few seconds before letting him go.
So it wasn't as long as Jonah. He was only swallowed for a few seconds, where if I remember right, Jonah was like 3 days and 3 nights or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't as long as Jonah. But just meters away, Dell had captured the moment on video while encouraging his son to stay calm. He was like, stay calm, stay calm. He can be heard saying after Son was released from the whale's mouth. I thought I was dead, Adrian told the Associated Press. I thought he had eaten me and that he had swallowed me.
It's the same thing that Jonah thought in that story, believe it or not, Kai. He thought he was a goner for sure as well.
Actually, yeah. He did, Doc. Not only that, like, if you remember, there was like a scene in Pinocchio where Pinocchio and Geppetto were swallowed by a whale as well and survived. So, I mean, I guess it's very common to be swallowed by whales.
Well, I mean, perhaps it's very common in certain areas, Guy. I'm not sure. It's a very interesting story nonetheless that this, person was literally swallowed by a whale for a few seconds and then released and ended up okay.
Yeah, I mean, totally, Doc. So he described the terror of those few seconds and explained that his real fear set in only after resurfacing, fearing that the huge animal would hurt his father, that he would perish in the cold waters. Despite the terrifying experience, Dell remained focused, filming and reassuring his son while grappling with his own worry. When I came up, I started floating. I was scared that something might happen to my father, too, that we wouldn't reach the shore in time, or that I would get hypothermia.
Kai, hypothermia is a very important thing that, not very important, but a very huge issue that you need to worry about in cold water, so I could totally see why he was worrying about that.
Yeah, exactly, Doc. Like, he was worried. The fact is, though, that he got swallowed by a whale whole and was perfectly fine. After a few seconds in the water, Adrian managed to reach his father's kayak and was quickly assisted. Despite the scare, both of them returned to the shore uninjured. Located about 1,600 miles or 3,000 kilometers south of Santiago, Chile's capital, the Strait of Magellan is a major tourist attraction known for adventure activities. Its frigid water poses a challenge for sailors, swimmers, and explorers who attempt to cross it in different ways. But most of the time, they're not expecting a whale to swallow them whole. Although it's summer in the southern hemisphere, temperatures in the region remain cool with 39 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius, and high, rarely exceeding 68 degrees or Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. While whale attacks on humans, by the way, are extremely rare in Chilean waters, whale deaths from collisions with cargo ships have increased in recent years. I'm pretty sure it's also very rare for them to be swallowed up swallowed up by a whale like they're Jonah or Pinocchio too. So, Doc, Have you ever like made a phone call when you were a kid and that you weren't supposed to, like somehow when you were a toddler and you got a hold of a phone and your mom didn't even realize that you got a hold of the phone?
Actually, yes, I did. Actually, at one point when I was younger, right? I was about 3 or 4. I got a hold of the phone and I called for pizza. And the thing is they showed up with the pizza and everything before my mom even realized it. I mean, at least I got to eat pizza that time.
Well, there's a toddler that was playing with an old cell phone and he dialed 911 for emergency donuts.
Wait, guy. So he called 911 and the emergency was donuts?
Yes, exactly. The emergency was donuts, believe it or not. Like, he literally called. I actually, let's see if I can find the audio.
911, what's the address of your emergency? What? Hello, 491.
What?
Hello?
Yes?
Do you have an emergency?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I do you be
Hello?
Donuts.
Donuts? I want donuts.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to share your donuts?
I'm taking it, mommy.
You going to take me to mommy now?
Hey, Mom, won't. Mom, won't. What is this donut? Yes. Go. What is this donut?
Hello?
What is this donut?
Can I talk to mom? See?
Oh man, that's funny.
So this story, as you can see, that's the audio. That it was an Oklahoma toddler that called 911 with a report of emergency donuts, as you heard. Local police sprang into action to deliver. The Moore Police Department shared the audio of a 911 call involving a toddler who was allowed to play with an old cell phone and discovered it still had emergency calling enabled. The boy requested emergency donuts before telling the dispatcher to have a nice day. Old cell phones may be unable to use high-speed data networks, take photos, or play music, but they can still call 911 in an emergency, the department said. As long as an old phone is functional, it can be used in an emergency. In case of the toddler named Bennett, his request for emergency donuts did not go unheard, as the police visited his home to deliver some snacks from Dunkin' Donuts. So they came through, Doc. They brought him those emergency donuts.
So you're telling me that they actually came to the house and they brought him some donuts. That's pretty cool. I'm glad that nobody got in trouble in this whole entire case or story, if you will, and that they delivered the emergency donuts, and they probably, realized,
Yeah, they realized that it was a complete accident and that the mom probably did not realize that the kid had the cell phone or that the cell phone was functional, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, if from what you had read there, Kai, it says that basically, she thought the cell phone was completely not functional because it couldn't do other things, but obviously it could still make 911 calls.
Yep. But hey, at least the kid got his emergency donuts that he requested, so that was cool. So this story is about a female prankster pretending to be a marshal sends Glasgow runners on a 2.5 kilometers detour during the race. The organizer of the event said it was hard to laugh off the incident as the prank led to the runners running away from medical help had it been needed. So they were like sent out of their way if they had need medical help.
I could see why this would be, a little detrimental, or basically you couldn't laugh off the prank. Like, pranks are supposed to be funny, and it reminds me of a lot of these content creators, if you will, Kai, that you see on YouTube that call things pranks, and you're like, that's not a prank. A prank is like, those little buzzer things, and you go to shake somebody's hand, or something like that. But a lot of these pranksters that you see on, YouTube or TikTok or the other content sites have just gone a little far. They're the kind of pranks that they pull, you're like, this could put people's lives at risk, this could put people in danger, this could upset people, this is just harsh and mean, if you will.
Yeah, I get exactly what you're meaning, Doc, because there is a lot of those content creators where they create this kind of content, and you're like, this is not the same kind of content, of pranks that, you or me would remember, growing up. So the runners at a 10K trail race in Glasgow were sent in the wrong direction by a prankster pretending to be a marshal who buried arrow signs marking the course. Acorn Trails said about 30 of the 115 participants at the event on Sunday were sent on a 2.5 kilometer or 1.5 mile detour by the woman. Organizers Alex Osborne and Michelle Sinsheimer told Sky News it is hard to laugh off the incident as the prank had led the runners away from medical help had it been needed.
Exactly, Kai. I mean, they're going on this long, running thing, if you will. They're on this, race, and so sending them off is not, good, because like they said, it could lead them away from medical help if needed. What if they had a heart attack, or what if they had trouble breathing, or what if one of the runners had asthma, or any of these particular various things? It's not funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's not funny at all. So Mr. Osborne said it's hard to laugh off the incident when you consider the possible implications had things not panned out as lightly as they did. There's a fine line between it being a humorous prank and an incident. Had one of the runners, not all of whom were local, got more lost when their warm clothing, refreshments, and first aid were at the finish line.
Exactly, Kai. Like, the thing is if they had gone far enough and they weren't locals, they could easily get lost, and this could lead to some disastrous consequences for everybody involved. I hope that the prankster realizes how much they had put these people's lives at risk.
Exactly, like you said, Doc. I'd asked the saboteur, who we were told is female, to consider the above, which I'd like to think they hadn't thought of Sunday. The competitors were affected by the mischievous interference had been offered a 50% discount on the entry to the next event. The near 10,000 race starts and finishes at the old golf clubhouse within Lynn Park following 2 laps of Castle Milk Woodland. Marshals had been positioned at several turning points, but the woman was able to direct runners towards Lynn Park Bridge from an unmanned spot. Acorn Trails had multiple events at the park, with at least 3 going into Castle Milk Woodland. Mr. Osborne said, "We've never had issues before, maybe the odd sign tossed into a hedge, but never course alteration or pretending to be part of the event staff." So as you can see, this person was, of course told that that was not the thing to do, and that they shouldn't have done that. But yeah, that's that story.
So, Kai, I have a story for you, right? Since you've been sharing all these stories, I figured I'd share a story, if you will. So, you know how they have dog sniffers, right? How they have dog sniffers that can sniff out drugs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Doc, so I'm not sure where you're going with this story.
Well, there's these people that basically are trained human sniffers to study the scent of mummified bodies. Ancient Egyptian mummies apparently smell like sweet and spicy. They smell sweet and spicy, if you will.
Mummies smell sweet and spicy. That's interesting. Like, the thing is, Doc, is basically, from what I understand, is at one point in Europe, people actually used to eat mummies like they were beef jerky and whatnot. And you don't hear about this a lot in history or history books or in history classes, but yeah, at one point in European history, when the people were discovering all these mummies in these ancient tombs, they were actually eating them like beef jerky and stuff. So the fact that there's these people, like you said in the story, that said mummies smell sweet and spicy, I wonder if that's what caused them to eat mummies back in Europe back in those old days.
I'm not sure, Kai. I mean, it could be. So researchers used what they described as trained human sniffers to study the scent of 9 mummified bodies. Researchers used what they described as human sniffers, equipment like an electronic artificial nose of sorts, to study the scent of 9 mummified bodies. They said the smell was a key consideration for ancient Egyptians when it came to the mummification process, meaning that even 5,000 years later, conservatives widely consider the aroma pleasant due to the use of resins and oils such as pine, cedar, and juniper.
So what you're telling me, Doc, is basically back when they used to, if you will, mummify the mummies, because of the scents and the aromas and the oils that they would use for the mummification process, they wanted it to where if somebody would discover the bodies later, it would still smell good.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, Kai, is basically the ancient Egyptians did this kind of thing on purpose, so that way when people would smell the corpses later, it would still have this nice smell. The findings, researchers said, which were published in the Journal of American Chemical Society, show that smell can be used as a way of analyzing the preserved bodies in a non-invasive way, but also went to find a way to recreate the smells in museums to give the visitors the full mummy experience. The research was carried out by teams at the University College of London and the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, in collaboration with conservators and curators at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Lead author Professor Maja Sterlich said, "The smell of mummified bodies has for years attracted significant interest from experts in the general public, but no combined chemical and perceptual scientific study has been conducted until now. The groundbreaking research really helps us better plan conservation and understand the ancient embalming materials, and it adds another layer of data to enrich the museum exhibition of mummified bodies." So, yeah, there you go.
That's really interesting, Doc. I did not know that particular part of the resin oils. I knew about the whole them eating mummies at one point, which I find completely disgusting and gross that the Europeans did that at one point. Well, probably not just Europeans. A lot of Eurocentric cultures eating mummified corpses is just ugh.
Yeah. So anyways, Professor Ali Abdelhaim, co-author and director of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, said, "To the ancient Egyptians, mummification was an important mortuary practice aimed at preserving the body and soul for the afterlife through a detailed ritual of embalming of the deceased using oils, waxes, and balms. The practice evolved over time in identifying different techniques and materials used to offer insights into the era, location, and social economic status of the individual being mummified." So I'm assuming, Kai, that for certain people, when they were mummified, they probably didn't have as distinct or nice smells, and where the rich were able to have more pleasant aromas for their mummification process. The researchers used various techniques and scientific equipment to identify the chemicals emitted by the mummified bodies, and then the panel of human sniffers described the smells in terms of quality, intensity, and pleasantness.
Just imagine, though, like, if you were, like, how do you get that job? And do you put that on your application? Like, I'm a human sniffer. And they're like, what do you mean by human sniffer? And it's like, I'm a human sniffer. I sniff mummies.
No, I don't know how they would do that on putting it on your application, if you can put that kind of thing on your application that you are a human sniffer of mummies. They said that they would now attempt to create smellscapes in museums with ancient mummy exhibits to enable audience to experience the important aspects of ancient Egyptian heritage. Which, just, it reminds me of that Futurama episode. You remember that Futurama episode?
Yes, I remember the Futurama episode. You're talking about the Futurama episode with the sniffinator or smellinator or whatever that Farnsworth had created, correct?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And imagine it's like Smellorama, like, they're doing this thing with movie theaters now and everything. So, it'd be interesting them doing this to museums. But certain things you just don't want to smell, am I right?
Yeah, certain things you don't want to smell. Oh, man.
Hey, Kai, remember a few years ago when the United States government decided to recognize corporations and people?
Yeah, actually, I do remember that, Doc. I remember very vividly of how the United States government made a huge mistake of, hey, let's make corporations people, when I hate to break it to them, corporations are not people.
Exactly. So the thing is now there is a mountain in New Zealand that is now legally a person. Mount Taranaka joins Euroa, a vast native forest on the North Island, and the Wahagani River, and being recognized as people under New Zealand's laws.
Now that I can get behind, Doc. I can totally get behind things like that, of mountains and natural things being considered as people, because these things need to be protected. And since humans have rights and whatnot, it would be easier to protect these forests and these mountains and these lakes if they're recognized as people.
And I'm pretty sure, Kai, that's exactly what's going on. Is probably in New Zealand they're getting these things recognized as people in order to protect them. A mountain in New Zealand is now legally recognized as a person after being granted all the rights and responsibilities of a human by the government.
Yeah, see, that's what it seems like they're doing, Doc, is they're trying to get these recognized and have the rights and responsibilities of a human. That way they can be protected, because humans are usually protected a lot more than objects and things under laws across the world. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what they're shooting for.
Yeah, so it says the new law offers extra protection for Mount Tanaka, now known as Taraka Manuga, its Maori name, which means it has all the rights and powers and duties and responsibilities of a person. It is part of an agreement between New Zealand's government and the indigenous tribes, which have long considered the 8,261 feet mountain an ancestor.
So these indigenous people there, right, according to what you're reading, is they've always considered that mountain a person. They're like, oh, that's our ancestors. So they've always considered it, and just now the government's basically agreeing with them, like, you know what, you're right, that's a person.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. The United States, not the United States government, sorry, the New Zealand government is now saying, you know what, this is an actual person and has the rights and responsibility and the protections of the government. The mountain's legal personality has a name, Te Kahua Tupua, which the law views as a living and indivisible whole, and includes Tanaka and its surrounding peaks and land incorporating all the physical and metaphysical elements. 4 members of the local tribe and 4 others appointed by the country's conservation minister will make up a new entity that acts as the face and voice of the mountain, the law rules. The legal recognition also acknowledges the mountain's theft from the people of that region after New Zealand was colonized and fulfills an agreement of reparation from the country's government to indigenous people for harms perpetuated against the land since. The legal rights essentially give the tribes more power up to uphold the mountain's health and well-being in an area where it becomes a popular spot for tourism, hiking, and snow sports. Despite the new bill which passed unanimously through Parliament, the mountain will remain a publicly accessible destination. The mountain has long been an honored ancestor, a source of physical culture and spiritual sustenance, and a final resting place. Paul Goldsmith, the politician responsible for the settlement between the government and the Maori tribes, told Parliament in a speech on Thursday. So yeah, they're recognizing this mountain as a legal entity, a actual living and breathing thing, and I think that's a good thing. That's what that story was about, and I just thought it was interesting, But hey, y'all tell us in the comment section of what y'all think.
So this story, right, takes place in Cuba, and this unfixed pothole on this Cuban street has been turned into an urban banana plantation.
So what you're telling me, Kai, is basically these people were like, you know what, they're not going to fix the pot road, so we're going to fix it, and we're going to turn it into a banana plantation. Is that what you're getting at?
So what happened is it began as a broken water pipe in Havana's El Cerro neighborhood, which is now a small banana plantation after local authorities forgot to fix the pothole. Cuba's infrastructure crisis is a well-known fact, with around 70% of the country's roads deemed in regular or poor conditions, but some streets are in such a bad state that they hardly can be considered functional. For example, a street in the El Cerro district of Havana has become famous for having a veritable banana plantation square in the middle of it. The large pothole housing this urban oddity began as a broken water pipe that eventually was fixed by the local authorities 3 years ago. The asphalt, however, was never replaced, and at one point, plants began taking root in the massive pothole. One of these plants was a banana tree, which gradually turned into a small plantation that residents tend to religiously.
So basically, I guess banana seeds probably fell or something, and they started tending to it, and like, you know what, this is now our banana plantation. This is where we're going to grow our bananas. This is going to be, that's one way to fix the, pothole. Like, the people aren't doing anything about it, and like, you know what, it's going to be a banana plantation now.
Yeah, so like one of the people said, after 3 years, they came and fixed the pipes, but they didn't pave the streets, one local man recently told Reuters. We want them to come and pave the street, but in the meantime, the banana plants bear fruit. So we took advantage to eat them because the food is very expensive.
So it fixes two things, really, when you think of it, right? It fixes the fact that, they had a pothole and nobody did anything about it. And then it also fixes any fact of the food being expensive because now they have a constant source of food within this banana plantation that's in the middle of this pothole.
Yeah. Basically, so Jose Antonio Fledes and Carmen Rosa Guzman consider themselves to be lucky to have the small banana plantation in front of their house, and they make sure to water the plants 3 times a day. They are grateful for the fruit they get to eat for free. No one knows how the original seeds wound up there, but the fact that they grew into large trees in the middle of the Havana street speaks volume about the state of the city's infrastructure. Every day, cars and motorcycles drive past this pothole banana plantation rising up from the street itself, but locals no longer find it strange. If anything, the bananas have become somewhat of a local attraction.
Well, nobody was doing anything, right, Kai? They weren't, doing anything about it, and so the people are like, you know what? We're gonna, do something ourselves, especially after they, have no idea why the banana, started growing there, but like, you know what? This is our banana plantation. We're gonna, be able to feed our, local area. We're gonna be able to solve the problem of the pothole, and now they don't find it strange because it's an everyday thing for them now that it's just there.
Yeah, like you said, the whole, the banana plantation is just there for them. So speaking of holes, right? There's a giant sinkhole that threatens to swallow an entire Brazilian town. Supu, a town of roughly 55,000 people located in the Brazilian Amazon, risks being swallowed by giant ravines that have been growing exponentially over the last few years. The authorities in this area have already evacuated 1,200 people from the highest areas of town, but with no solution in sight, the giant ravines threaten to eventually swallow the entire settlement.
Wow, so what you're saying is basically this entire town, the sinkhole is going to basically suck up their town at one point, and that town's not going to be there. So they're trying to evacuate the people to get them out of there before it happens, right?
Yeah, they're trying to get all the people out of there because their town is turning into a giant sinkhole. It's like that episode of The Simpsons. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't an episode. It was in the movie. Remember the movie of The Simpsons? Maybe it was an episode. I can't remember, but the whole entire town was about to be sucked up by a sinkhole.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think it was in the movie. But yeah, it was about to be sucked up by a sinkhole because of the entire pollution or something that they had done.
You know what? It might have been an episode. I don't remember. Anyways, back to the story. So their sinkhole problem dates back roughly 3 decades and is reportedly the causal combination of factors such as erosion, prone sandy soil, poor urban planning, and deforestation, but has been exacerbated by recently heavy rains, which causes sinkholes to expand at a rapid pace. A couple of years ago, experts identified 26 giant holes advancing toward the town, some of which have been since emerged to create ravines up to 20 meters deep. In the space of the last few months, the dimensions have expanded exponentially, approaching substantially close to the residences. An emergency decree issued by the city government earlier this month states, "It's very scary. Sometimes I pray to God that it doesn't rain so hard. There are times when I even ask him for forgiveness." Nazari Fitiosa, a safety technician who lives near the craters, told Globe, "When it rains, it's scary that no one sleeps here. We stay awake all night listening to the ground collapse." I mean, so you could understand that, right?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, if I was them, I would just leave the town. I mean, I know that's where they've always been, that's where they've always lived. You know, they probably have lived there for generations, but their town is like slowly becoming a giant sinkhole, and it's going to be a crater in the ground, like that last episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where the Hellmouth swallows up the entire town of Sunnydale, California, and there's no longer any Sunnydale, California, because it's been sucked up into a crater and ends up being a crater in the ground. And that sounds like what's about to exactly happen to their town, is it's about to become a giant crater, just like that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I'd leave if I were them.
So this is the last story of this episode of the Bizarre Ones podcast, if you will. So this is going to be the last story that we're going to cover. Are you ready?
How long have we been going with this at the moment, Kai? Like how long, how many minutes, if you will, or whatnot, for this particular podcast episode?
Well, to be honest, Doc, it's going to be a lot longer than our typical episode that we've done so far for Bizarre Ones, I believe. I'm not sure how long it's going to be after I edit it down and whatnot, because there's particular parts that I might have to edit down because there's brief moments of silence when I'm looking up the articles and whatnot that we're observing and going over, if you will. So right now it's about an hour, but it might be edited down to a lot less than an hour because of the brief gaps, if you will. So it might be a lot shorter than that. Yeah, anyways, yeah. It's been going on for a while now. But I'll have to edit it down and shorten it, if you will.
So basically what you're saying, Kai, is that so far it's been basically pretty close to an hour, other than the parts you have to edit out, like the parts where we went quiet, or the parts out that we had to get up to use the restroom or get a drink, or for you to look up the articles, right?
Yeah, basically there's those time gaps where we had to get up to use the restroom, or the time gaps where I had to look up the articles and stuff like that. So, but it's about an hour, but I would assume that it would be narrowed down to around 30 minutes to 40 minutes once I edit it all down, if you will.
Okay, that makes sense. So anyways, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so this African man, for this article, this African man has 16 wives, 104 children, and 144 grandchildren.
So this man was really getting busy then, if you will, Kai. Like he was, wow, 16 wives? That's a lot of wives. I mean, I can understand the concept of being in love with more than one person, being with more than one person, if you will, because I myself am with Albert and, of course, one other person as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you will, this guy, though, he had like 16 wives. Like, I think 2 or 3 or 4, I can understand that, but like 16 wives, and then he has 104 children, 144 grandchildren. That's a lot.
Yeah, Kai, that is definitely a lot of wives and a lot of children, a lot of grandchildren. Like I said, I can understand polyamory or polygamy as long as it's between consenting adults, but 16 wives seems a little bit too many wives. And how do you keep up with 104 children and let alone 144 grandchildren?
I don't know how you keep up with that many, to be honest. But anyways, Mzee Ernesto Mwanchuki Kapingo is a man from a small village in Tanzania who has a very special family. He is married to 16 women. He has over 100 children and a whopping 144 grandchildren. These days, many men struggle with the idea of starting a family and having children, as even extra mouths to feed feels like too much pressure. But this guy is taking care of more than 2 or 3 children, and even beyond that, because like most people think like, hey, 2 or 3 children's enough, but not for Mzee Ernesto Machingo Kapingo, who's dedicated his life to expanding his family as much as possible. He hails from a small village in Njombe, Tanzania, The African man currently has 16 wives, 104 children, 144 grandchildren. His homestead looks like a small village. He has a house for each of his wives and people running around doing chores and looking after dozens of small children. Like, that's a lot, man.
It seems like, Kai, that he heard the whole "it takes a village to raise a child," and he literally took that to heart. Like, he decided that that was going to be his thing. He was going to have an entire village to take care of his children.
So the thing is why he did this is he said in a recent interview with Afra Max that he began expanding his family at the request of his father. He married his first wife in 1961 and had his first child a year after that, but his father told him that one wife was not enough. He offered to pay the dowries if only he agreed to take on more wives. His father said, "Our clan is small. I want you to expand it." So, like, literally, he expanded, and basically, Ernesto had 20 wives at first, right? And then some choose to leave at the point, and others pass away. But today, he still lives with 16 wives, 7 of whom are sisters. So, yeah, he has that many freaking wives.
So the question is, Kai, do each of them, like, take up responsibilities? Like, do each of them help, do the thing? Take care of his little village, I guess, if you will, that he's building.
Yeah, he said, "Here, everyone has their role," the patriarch said. "Each wife has their own house, her own kitchen. There is no competition. Everyone knows their place. We farm together, we eat together, we work together. This is not just a home, it's a system, and it works."
So basically, what you're telling me is they basically grow their own food, they grow everything. They basically, even though you would think it would be a whole lot, to them, it's not, because they each have their own responsibility, and so they're taking care of it, and so it's self-sustaining.
Yeah, it's self-sustaining, and it just seems to work for them. And it's just a really amazing story, if you will. So, hey, everybody, thank you for listening to this podcast, or either on YouTube or Spotify or Amazon or wherever you're listening to our podcast from. We really appreciate y'all listening to it and whatnot, and we hope to create more and whatnot, if you will. Thank you, Dr. Anarchy, for co-hosting this episode with me.
No problem at all, Kai. I actually enjoy with this podcast, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of here.
All right, so that was Dr. Anarchy. Now, we still have a few more episodes before the season of this podcast for season 1 of Bizarre Ones is over with, but I'm not sure for next season if we're going to continue to do these strange but true news stories, if you will, and we might just focus more on the paranormal particular stories or occurrences for season 2 of this Bizarre Ones podcast. So don't be surprised if when we go into season 2, if you will, that it's not the same, if you will. Well, it'll still be the same, but there probably won't be these strange but true news stories for season 2 of Bizarre Ones podcast. But don't worry about that quite yet, because we still have several episodes before season 1 of this podcast is over with. It's just I've decided to take the strange but true news stories and just focus those on for my YouTube channel that I run, which is Bizarre One Studios, and just have that for those particular videos, if you will, on that channel that I have on YouTube, and instead for this particular podcast focus on the paranormal or the strange, bizarre stories. That will be season 2, of course. Season 1 will still continue where there's strange but true, then paranormal story, if you will. So we're still going to continue with that the way it is until the end of this season, which there'll be at least 12 episodes, I think I planned for the entire season 1 of Bizarre Ones podcast. Now, season 2 might actually have more episodes. Just season 1's going to have 12. And then I'll take a short of a break after we complete all the 12 episodes. And then with a few months later, we'll come back and we'll go right back at it. But anyways, thank you for listening to this podcast, and tell me in the comment section of what you thought of any of these stories. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you for listening. I've been your host, Kai, and of course the other one was Dr. Anarchy. Until next time, stay strange and stay bizarre.